Hello there. A great welcome to this week's episode of Gina Gardiner and Friends. And I'm joined again by April Corbett, who's been on the show before. Hi, April. Thank you very much for coming on the show again.
Hi, Gina. Thanks for having me. And I'm really excited that we're going to change it up today. And I'm going to get to ask you some questions about what it is that you are up to in the world.
Well, that certainly makes a change. Thank you.
So I have a few questions. Of course, this will just come as it comes, but I have a couple of questions. I want to know how you got into doing what you're doing is my first question.
My background is I was a principal of a large school for over 20 years. And the school actually won a whole range of awards. And one of them was that we became what was known as a beacon school. And our beacon bid was based on leadership. And so for the last probably 6 or 7 years of my tenure, I worked with dozens of other head teachers or principals and hundreds of teachers, helping them embed the same principles which had made up my own school so successful. We were on the best 100 schools in the country list twice during my tenure. And I also did a number of external jobs in order to bring an income into school because our budget was so bad and we wanted modern technology and wanted more special needs than we could afford. So I only did the face-to-face stuff outside school. The rest of the stuff I did in my own spare time. And so I had a huge wealth of experience in terms of leadership and developing potential. And so when I left headship in 2004, having been a head for 20 years, I thought, what am I going to do now? And so I took myself off to do a research project across industries and looked with them at how do you train and develop emerging leaders? How do you develop senior leaders who are going to lead effectively, but lead in a way that brings the best out in people? And of course, they were facing exactly the same problems as people did in school.
Of course.
And I've always been passionate about helping people step into what I call their genuine power. I think one of the things that is a gift is I see more in people very often than they see in themselves. And I can help them identify a purpose that's probably bigger than they ever thought possible and help them to achieve that. And I think I'd done that since tiny, was always supporting people. And I became a qualified coach while I was a serving principal. And so for me, it was a natural progression. So there's been sort of two strands, really, working with individuals in a whole range of contexts, helping them to be more confident, to have a great relationship with themselves, to deal with life changes, whether that's a new job, redundancy, bereavement, or whatever. And just helping them to get the best out of life. But on the other side has been the professional side and working with professionals, men and women, in terms of their professional life, their capacity to deal with the difficult things within work. And then since 2009, I've worked with businesses strategically, helping them to become much more profitable, but by developing leadership in this empowered and enlightened way. Because if you focus on the financial profits, you might do well for a short time, but you're not going to do well in the long term, because the collateral damage is how people are feeling unvalued, unlistened to, that they are stressed, so they don't perform well, productivity goes down and so on, and you don't keep your skilled people. So there's several strands to my work, but underpinning it is lead yourself first, and then you effectively lead others, whether that's your family, or your colleagues in a team, or your whole business.
That's lovely. So would it be fair to say that in order to live your best life, so to speak, you have to learn to lead yourself, and then you can move into leading other people? Is that the idea?
It is. So let me give you a couple of examples. If you don't manage your emotions, when things go wrong, or even just because you're feeling a bit tired or grouchy. It's very easy to burn a bridge, but not so easy to rebuild it. So learning to manage your emotions doesn't mean that you don't deal with the issue. It means that you manage your emotions first, and then you deal with the issue, and then you're not going to say something that you'd later regret. And very often,
and managing emotions doesn't mean we don't have them.
absolutely.
I think when we say managing emotions, I think people immediately think, oh, I have to stuff that.
The very opposite of that, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, I think emotions are one of those things that people often bury because they don't know how to deal with them.
Or they explode because they don't know how to deal with them.
Yeah. And for me, you know, when you bury your emotions, not only is it bad for your immune system and your health and so on, but they're a bit like a dragon that's been put in a box. And then the slightest thing that opens the box is fire-breathing dragon comes flying out of the box and doesn't want to go back in. So, you know, your children are being a pain. You lose your temper, you shout at them and say, you're grounded for the next 56 years. Well, the children know you're never going to do it. And so you lose the moral high ground. Or you're a boss and you've got somebody who's doing something that they shouldn't be doing, that you go in and you're very angry with them. The minute you are aggressive, the minute you are not in control of your words and your thoughts, you lose the moral high ground. You're giving away your power. Whereas if you can get yourself centered and you can look at, why am I so angry, or why am I so frustrated, or why am I so upset? And then you confront the issue rather than being confrontational. And I think a lot of people get those two mixed up. They don't confront the issue because they don't like confrontation. So things build and build and build, and then they explode. And there is a confrontation, but it's never productive.
Well, and a friend of mine used to say years ago, and this is what it makes me think of, you might win the battle, but you're definitely going to lose the war. Absolutely. So that is that controlling your emotion or regulating your emotions is, for me, the number one thing that we need to learn as humans. And someone told me that years ago, and it still took me years to learn. So what would you say is kind of that first step for people?
Awareness always, because unless you're aware, you were on my program quite recently. We were talking about beliefs and the patterns of our thinking and our beliefs and our thoughts and behaviors. So for me, unless you are aware, you're not in a position to do anything about it. And I think you almost, you know, look in the mirror and look at the patterns that are going on, whether that's thoughts. I mean, if you want a better quality of life, then think better thoughts, your beliefs, your language, and your behaviors. And ask yourself, what is that telling other people? What's that saying about me? And is there a better way? And if you're not getting the results that you want, what most people do is they do the same thing harder, more frequently. It's Einstein's definition of madness, isn't it? To keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. But
100%. Yeah, 100%. What can we give people as a very first step? Because we did discuss that awareness is something that is key to the process of regulating your emotions. So if we're going to do that, what is the first physical step that someone can take to learn about that?
You know, if you want to change how you are turning up, the first and the easiest thing to do is to look at your physiology. And I would say breathe. You know, we don't breathe very well. Most of us, when we are angry, upset, frustrated, are working out of our left brain, which tends to catastrophize. It tends to have an either or outcome.
Yeah.
What they know now is that if we breathe deeply, box breathing is very useful. So you breathe slowly to the count of 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold on empty for 4. What that does is it works on the vagus nerve and it takes us into right brain thinking, where that's where we find solutions. That's where we're creative. That's where we can develop relationships in a much more holistic way. You know, when I was little and perhaps I'd lost my temper, I can remember my mum and dad saying to me, count to 10.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I think that they didn't probably realize the scientific reason behind it, but in that counting to 10, in that taking the opportunity to just slow things down and breathe, that you give people the opportunity to then allow themselves to just have a bit of space. And I think one of the challenges many people, particularly when they're upset or cross about something, is they don't want to let it go. They feel that if I don't say something in the moment, I will have lost the opportunity. And so a really good, simple technique is to be able to say, Alison, we need to talk about this, but actually I need to get myself together first. So I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to make a cup. I'm English, going to go and make a cup of tea. And I want us to come back, and I want us to sit down calmly and talk about this. And by doing that, you're doing a number of things. One is you are demonstrating, number one, I need to talk to you about this. You're not getting away with it. I need to talk to you about this.
And that's about boundaries. You're just setting up the stage to continue when you are more together.
Absolutely. And I'll talk about what I'm not doing in a moment, but also you're giving yourself that opportunity for you to diffuse the situation and put yourself back into your power zone where you're in control. And then you can go back and have that conversation. What I'm not doing, and I know from a number of clients who struggle, they had parents who say, I'm going to sort you out tomorrow morning, leaving their children or their staff to think about it, or wait till your dad gets home, he's going to sort you out, rather than dealing with it. And that just sets up a whole range of other problems. But I think breathing, the way you stand too, I teach archetypes. You know, if you stand in a powerful position, I don't mean aggressive.
No.
But if you think about a medieval royal, for example, they expected to be listened to, because if they weren't listened to and somebody upset them, it would be to the Tower of London and off with your head. So I think some of it is about the intention in our head. What is it we intend? How do we expect to be listened to? And archetypes are great if you're at a bar and you want to be served quickly. If you put yourself into a powerful position, which is about standing up straight, shoulders back, feet slightly apart, so that you are stable, ground yourself. Imagine that there are roots going down as deep as you are tall. And you'll be amazed at how people then feel your energy in a very different way. And they
100%.
notice you, even in a busy bar, that they will notice you and they will serve you more quickly. So it's got very practical applications as well as dealing with.
I love that. So when you're feeling like or noticing that you are perhaps not regulating your emotions, be it good, bad, or in between, no bad, just, the first step would be breathing, and box breathing is great. And I also know that it takes people a while to get there. So sometimes one of the things I learned about anger was that if instead of exploding, because I used to be an exploder, I can now take a breath, a really deep breath, right down into my belly, sigh it out, and say, you know what? I'm really angry right now. So I really need to stop this conversation until I dissipate that. And that is literally what I do with anger now, is say it. Just give life to it. But it always starts with breathing. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. And something else that you said was about intention. And I love that. Can you just say a little bit more about your intention? Because when you do embody yourself and your intention, or even question your intention when you're about to say something, I think that's really powerful too. Do you want to say more about that?
When I was a principal or head teacher, a student, I've had it happen so many times, students would come and say, how is it you can stand in front of the whole school, big school, and you just clear your throat, or you just say very quietly, I'm waiting, and children all sit up and the staff stop talking, and assembly goes on. And one said, I could dance naked in the front and they wouldn't notice me. And I said, perhaps the difference is I expect to be listened to.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Mm-hmm.
you expect to be listened to, then it's not that just in the intention, that's the starting point, but by the very intention, you stand differently, you breathe differently, your voice is different to if you think, oh, nobody's listening to me, I'm no good, I'm not worthy. And so that intention is really important. And if that intention is that you are going to step into what I call your power zone, step into being truly, who you are, because everybody is a unique, amazing human being. 8
We
billion
all
people
have
on
a
the planet,
superpower.
and we certainly do. But we have to own it in order
Yeah.
to use it. And so the intention, I would suggest to people, if you're listening to this, give it a try. You've got nothing to lose. It costs you nothing. But when you're talking to your children, for example, what's your intention? If you're talking at a parent level, kids don't listen to your white noise. If you just nag and nag and nag and nag, they block it out. Everything has to come with cause and consequence. And one of the challenges, I think, particularly for mums, is that their voice is at the same level as the children in terms of tone. And so mums then start to raise their voice and start to shout and screech and so on, which becomes more like children. It's a bit like having an excitable puppy. If you have an excitable puppy, you don't raise your voice, you bring it down to something very quiet. And there has to be cause and consequence. I don't think adults are any different to children. The situation may be different, but the principles are the same.
Yes. Oh, well, I'm so glad you brought up the puppy because I do have one and it's 6 months old now. And I have been practicing that, getting much more quiet and whispering. And her response is completely different. If I raise my voice, she amps up.
Try it with children. And I think recognize it may not work straight away, but if you're nagging and nothing's working, then you need to do something different. And I would suggest to you that not at a time when there's a big challenge going on. This is true in terms of working with a team and working with colleagues. You don't hold people, try and do it when there is a big schmozzle going on. You say, we need to deal with this, and you do it in a quiet way when everybody is much more prepared to listen. And then this is the cause, this is the consequence, but you have to stick to it. And that's the truth for everybody. But set your 100%. Expectations clearly, explicitly. The other thing I think to say is because you say it doesn't mean that that's what people have heard.
100%. That is so true, because we can't be responsible for how someone receives something, but we can package it in a way that's going to be more palatable.
We can also check with the other person what they've heard and what they've understood. And when you do that, then you've got that two-way communication rather than just speaking at someone.
Yeah, 100%. And I see that a lot with married people, wives mostly. And I shudder to say this, that I might get in trouble, but wives nagging their husband are constantly, honey, 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 honey. And you can see they just check out. And I get it. I would too. Right. So it's, I love that. And I love the intention piece. That is so smart. Wow. This has been really informative, because I did know a little bit about what you do, but I think I just figured out how smart you are. You're brilliant. You're so smart. And I love listening to you. So if I were looking for you, which I know many people, I love that. And I know that you have several programs and several ways that you work with different people. So if I were someone that were listening right now, Gina, where would I go to get more information and learn more about the services that you offer?
I think probably one of the best places to go is to go to my YouTube channel, because that'll give you a sense of a whole wide range of resources, and the links to my websites and all of those other things are there. So if you go to Genuinely You with Gina Gardiner on YouTube. You'll know it's me because there's a little video at on the homepage. It tells you a bit about my story, but there's dozens of playlists around all sorts of themes. They break down into leading yourself and leading others, but in a whole range of different contexts.
Oh, I love that. And now I'm going to go over there and subscribe right now because I wasn't aware you had a YouTube channel. So yay, that's
Brilliant.
awesome. So thank you, Gina, for giving me this opportunity to try out my interviewee skills. And it's been really great talking to you today. And when you guys do visit Gina's channel, don't forget to subscribe. I'm sure there's some value there for you to watch.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and join us on the next show. Bye-bye now.